All right, this week's question has to do with appetites. I'm not even gonna go there, to be honest. It felt rude. It felt a little bit personal, and I was slightly offended. So, you can take it or leave it. You can do what you want with that, but let's just move on, okay? Are you good with that? Yeah, okay, thank you. Hey, I have to tell you this. We started, if you were here last week, we started a new series on integrity called Your Integrity, Our World. And I told a story during my message last week about how I had ordered something from Amazon and 2 of those things showed up and I only paid for one of them. And I said I wasn't sure what I was gonna do and whether or not I was gonna maintain my integrity in that. So here's what happened. I came in on Monday morning, and because people are like, you better do the right thing. I was like, okay, I will, calm down. And this is what I was waiting on. This is a new invitation thing where you can invite your friends to Jingle Jam after the service, but it was packaged horribly. 4 boxes, this part and the legs and base were in the identical boxes, and then these 2 parts that hold the cards, they were in identical boxes. I thought I had 2 of one thing. I only had 1 of one thing. I'm still a person of integrity. Thank you so much. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clear that up. Yeah, for sure. No, give me too much credit. So this will be out in the lobby after the service if you want to invite somebody to Jingle Jam. So, hey, I'm gonna pray for us and we're gonna dive into week 2. God, thank you for today. Thank you for mega awesome costume party and just for this beautiful snowy day. And we just pray that you would be with us today as we dive in and we look at what it means to be people of integrity, the things that challenge our integrity. God, I just pray that you would meet us here. You would challenge us. You would speak into our hearts and our lives today. God, we love you. We need you. We pray these things in your name. Amen. So last week, we said that integrity is a resolve or the courage to do the right thing just because it's the right thing, no matter what it costs. And if there's a price tag attached to that integrity, that's even better. And we said that last week, that integrity is something we expect in other people, right? And the reason why we expect that in other people points to the fact that integrity is like this big ought to that is kind of overhanging all of us. An ought to that we didn't come up with, yet we can't seem to shake it. It's an ought to that we hold other people accountable to. But this is what they ought to do. This is what we ought to do. But when it comes to our personal life, sometimes we don't do what we ought to do. And integrity or a lack of integrity is personal, but it's never private. To the point that because when my life lacks integrity, it affects the world and the people around me. It may be your personal decision, but it impacts the people around you. Your integrity, our world. My integrity, my world. Your integrity, your world, your family. And so we shared an anchor verse for this series that we're going to talk about each of the weeks in this series. And while I read it, I'm going to ask you to sit up straight. And if you were here last week, you'll kind of understand. But this verse, it kind of alludes to and reminds us of a posture of integrity. The verse comes from Proverbs 11. It says this: the integrity of the upright will guide them, but the crookedness of the treacherous will destroy them. There's a connection between integrity and the posture of our lives, because people that are standing upright, that are sitting upright, that are looking off into the future, that are taking a long look, not the short view, those people, integrity is how they make decisions. What's the right thing to do? If you're a Christian, maybe what's the thing that God wants me to do? I'm gonna do what I ought to, regardless of the consequences. So the upright, The people looking far off into the future are the ones who maintain their integrity. But it says the crookedness or the bent overness of the crookedness or the bent overness of the treacherous will eventually lead and destroy them. So I want you to think about that. Long view integrity, short view here and now will destroy you. And I've come up with like a short definition of integrity. That first one we talked about was a little too long. So here's what I want to tell you about integrity. I think this is, maybe it's too simple, but I think it's memorable. Integrity is doing what you ought to do, even if it costs you. Doing what you ought to do, even if it costs you. That's it. Look, you know what to do, so just do what you ought to do. And honestly, if it was that simple, I'd just close in prayer, we all go home, get warm, stay in our house for the rest of the day. So why is this so hard? It's difficult. It's difficult in part because of our appetites. Our appetites pose a constant threat to our integrity. Just about every single day of our lives, we have to say no to one to protect or to satisfy the other. In other words, we have to say no to an appetite to protect our integrity, or we have to say no to our integrity to satisfy our appetites. And when we think about appetites, right, there's really two things that we think about. When you think about appetites, the first one is food, the second one is sex. Yeah, you're not gonna say that in church, that's fine, I got it. But beyond that, I mean, many different appetites. Like here's just a list to kind of get us started, part of our discussion today. We can have an appetite for acceptance. What about intimacy or inclusion? To be included, we want to be respected. We have an appetite for fame or for progress. I mean, who doesn't like progress, right? That's a big deal to a lot of us. To be envied. Oh, see, some of you, like, if you're being honest, you'd have to admit, like, yeah, I want to live an enviable lifestyle. That's why I post it on all the social media all the time, right? Stuff. Oh, I love stuff, right? We have an appetite for stuff, more stuff, new stuff, all the stuff, responsibility, achievement, winning, all those appetites. And we could keep going. I mean, the list is long. We could go on, but these are all reasonable, right? Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with them. They're acceptable. But every single one of these, at some point, presents and poses a threat to our integrity. Now, before we talk more about that, I want to just give you 3 quick comments about appetites in general, because we're going to talk about appetites today, and this will help us in our broader context of what we're talking about. So the first one is this. Number 1 comment about appetites is this. People who believe in God, right? We call ourselves theists. Like, we believe that there is a God. So people who believe in God, we believe that when it comes to appetites, God created them, and they're good, right? They help keep us alive and all those things. But sin distorted them, okay? So God created them, sin distorted them. Now, the second one, that's what theists, that's what people who believe in God and follow Jesus, that's what they believe. Here's what everybody believes, okay? Everybody believes, number 2, appetites are never fully and finally satisfied. In fact, appetites have a one-word vocabulary, and that one word is more. Always more, never satisfied. Because appetites, they fuel our discontentment. We see people who live better, who drive better, who marry better, they're better educated, they have better opportunities, and we think to ourselves, man, well, of course, like if I had that, or if I accomplished that, or if I accumulated that, well then I'd be content. But we know that's not true. When we get there, it just leaves us wanting more. The third thing about appetites is this. Appetites always whisper now. Appetites never whisper later, right? An appetite never says, let's just wait until tomorrow. If that's not your appetite talking, if that's what you're hearing. That's actually maybe self-control, totally different thing. Because appetites, they're not a fan of delayed gratification. This isn't a Christian thing. This isn't a religious thing. This is just a human being truth, right? Like, for instance, do you have an appetite for achievement? I know I do. Like, I want to achieve things. I want to advance. I want to progress. I want to do bigger and better things all the time. Like, but your integrity or my integrity could become an obstacle to achieving things as fast as I want to achieve them. The reason for that is that doing things the right way may slow things down, because oftentimes the easiest or the quickest route isn't always the most ethical route. And when you experience that tension between your appetite and your integrity, which we all do, like every single day of our lives at some level, in that moment, we have a decision to make. Will my integrity guide me, or will my appetite guide me? And here's the thing, the reason why we tell lies, the reasons why we might not tell the whole truth, the reasons why we would try to cover up things, the reasons why we kind of tell half the story, it's not because we think that's the right thing, we think that's the best thing. No, the reason why we do that is because it's a mean to an end. And it's a way to satisfy an appetite. To tell the whole truth, to tell the whole story, to do the right thing, it means that I don't get what I want. I mean, if I told you my whole story, you may not call me. If you knew everything about me, like without like me kind of like sort of trimming off all the rough edges and all that and cleaning it up, like if you knew all that, we wouldn't even have a relationship. See, those are appetites inside of me wanting to be accepted by you. So from time to time, maintaining our integrity is gonna mean that we have to say no to an appetite. Now there's pretty familiar Old Testament story. This story, I'm gonna share it with you today because it not only illustrates this tension so well, but it also gives us a word picture. A word picture that I really hope after today stays in the front of your mind, maybe for the rest of your life. That this is the kind of thing that maybe someday this picture keeps you from making a decision now that you might pay for later. See, it's a story about two twin brothers, an older brother, a younger brother. The older brother, he was a really good hunter, a warrior, a doer. The younger brother, he was a thinker, a schemer, and a really, really good cook, okay? Esau and Jacob. And you're like, oh yeah, no, Kendal, it's Jacob and Esau. No, it's not. See, if you grew up in church, that's what you know. But here's the thing. In that culture, the older brother would have been listed first, Esau and Jacob. But because of the story I'm about to tell you, forever and ever and ever afterwards, they will be known as Jacob and Esau, not Esau and Jacob. So Esau, because he's the older brother, Esau would automatically inherit something that very strange to us today, but they called it a birthright. And this birthright had certain rights that came to him just because of birth order. If you were the firstborn son, you had special privileges. You had, not because you were talented, not because you were disciplined, not because you had done anything at all. It was just because you were born first. For example, when your parents died, you got a double portion of the inheritance, double what all your siblings got. Now, as a firstborn, I think that sounds like a great idea. Like we should just bring that one back, right? The other thing, maybe even more important, was that if you were the firstborn son, you got what they called judicial authority, which meant that if there was a dispute amongst family members, you got to decide. In other words, there's this family squabble, right? Now, a family squabble back in those days usually ended with bloodshed. Like it was a big deal, right? But as the firstborn son, you could sit down with the extended family, talk to everybody, you come back and say, I've heard all the evidence, here's what we're gonna do. And what you said, your word was law. Now, that also might be worth bringing back. I like telling my siblings what to do. Like, I'm just saying, right, as a firstborn. But that's the context for our story, okay? So here we go. We find it in Genesis 25. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Their father, Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau. But Rebekah, their mother, loved Jacob. Okay, that right there, that is just the beginning of our problems, right? I think I've said this before. Don't have favorite children. It's never gonna turn out well. It's not a good idea. The story continues. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, because that's what he did, he hung around the tents, he cooked the stew, Esau came in from the open country famished. And the Hebrew word here means that he was weary, he was faint. You know, maybe today we would say that he was hangry, right? You ever been hangry? You can't figure out if you're more angry or hungry. It just makes you miserable, right? This is pretty much a setup for Esau. His appetite is engaged. His defenses are down. His senses are heightened because of the smell of this delicious stew. I mean, Esau is in trouble. So it says this, he said to Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. Quick, 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 right? This is an appetite talking, isn't it? Quick, quick, I've got to have it now. And this situation right here rarely happens in the real world, right? I mean, this rarely happens where the younger, weaker brother has leverage over the older, stronger brother. In your house, maybe it might look something like this. Oh, hey, what time did you get home last night? Oh, you don't want mom and dad to ever find out what time you got home last night? What's that worth to you? And then the younger sibling, if they're smart, they'll do this. They're gonna start at the top, right? Like, go big. $50, and mom and dad will never find out what time you got home last night. Yeah, right, I ain't paying you $50. I'll pummel you instead of paying, no. Okay, $20, and mom and dad will never find out. No, mom and dad will never. $5, and you buy me Dutch Bros, okay? Deal, okay? And we're good. Like that's how it happens, and that's Jacob. Jacob's a thinker, a schemer, and he's got this opportunity, and he goes for it. I mean, Jacob, go big or go home. Here's the deal. He says this, Jacob replied, first, sell me your birthright. What? What? That would be the correct response for anyone. Yeah, right. Try again. You want me to trade my birthright for a bowl of stew? The birthright is Esau's whole future. You want me to trade my future for a bowl of stew? I wouldn't trade my future for a lifetime supply of stew. You wouldn't trade your future, your birthright. Who in their right mind would trade their birthright for a bowl of stew? Who would trade their future for a bowl of stew? Who wouldn't trade their integrity for a bowl of stew? Who would trade their self-respect for a bowl of stew? Who would trade their relationship with their kids or with their future kids for a bowl of stew? Who would trade a valuable relationship that you hope goes the distance for a bowl of stew? Who would trade their reputation, their profession, their future for a bowl of stew? The answer is nobody. Nobody would do that. And at the same time, the answer is potentially everybody. Now, what you hear, when you hear this within the context of the story, you almost laugh, right? Like, I am so sure. I'm so sure you're gonna trade your birthright for a bowl of stew. I would never do that. But when it's right there in front of you, and it's amazing the bad trades that we are willing to make. We've seen it. We've done it. This story is so helpful because it gives us almost like the psychology that happens, that works, and how it works in us, even today. Check out what happens next. Look, I'm about to die, Esau said. Bro, you just walked from the field. You just walked into the tent. You're not about to, I'm about to die, right? Did you ever have that sibling that was a little over dramatic, over the top, right? What is Esau doing? What are you doing here? He's doing what we all do. He's building his case. This is a big deal. This isn't just a bowl of stew. No, 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 no. This is life or death. Jacob's like, really? Okay. Because you know what Esau is doing here? What Esau is doing is he's doing what we do. He's justifying. He's justifying. He's just lying. He's just lying to himself. And what he says next is so reflected in the things that we think and the things we say. He says, what good is the birthright to me? It's not that big a deal. I'm going to add 2 words to the end of that verse, okay? This is not in the Bible, but I think it helps us focus on what's really going on. This is the KHV, the Kendal Hommes version, okay? What good is the birthright to me right now? Jacob's like, yeah, for sure. It's of no value to you right now. I mean, yeah, you've got to wait. It's worth nothing until our father dies. Like, oh, that's so long from now. That is so much later. The integrity of the upright. The integrity of the upright, of people who take the long view. The integrity of the upright will guide them, and later is longer. The upright see right. Those that are bent over, that are focused on now, they just don't see well. The upright are focused on later, and later is longer, and longer is better. Esau is looking at right now, not later. And can I just tell you something about now? Here's the thing. Now is right now. And then now, it's gone, right? Let me review that. Some of you, is too early in the morning, right? This is the deepest part of the sermon for you today. This is now, and then that now is gone, and it's a new now. And then that now is gone. Like, when we're concentrated on now, we are not looking to later. So Jacob, he knows he's got to be careful right here. Don't mess this up. Jacob says, swear to me first. So Esau swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Now, an oath was a big deal back then. You would never go back on an oath. He swore an oath, and he sold, or he traded his birthright to Jacob. And for all of us, we're standing on the outside looking at this going, this is insane. What are you doing? But I bet once upon a time, in all of our lives, that there was a mom, a dad, a grandparent, a best friend who watched while we made a decision. And they thought, maybe they even said to us, whoa, are you kidding? Wait. Have you thought this through? And we said this, oh yeah, I don't care. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread, some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then he got up and left. I mean, Jacob goes for it right here. You have the whole thing of stew. Yeah, here, have some bread too. Like, this is a big deal. I'm getting the birthright, right? And Esau, he ate it, and the stew was gone, and so was his birthright, and so was his future. He traded his future for a bowl of stew. What would cause someone to do that? An appetite. An appetite that's so engaged, that's so influenced, that's so enraged, that it's all we can see. And here's how the story ends, and this is so instructive to all of us. Here's how it ends. Esau despised his birthright. Here's what that means. That Esau decided, I don't care. If you'd walked up to Esau after he ate, he set the bowl back down, he's walking off, and he's like, it's not a big deal. I don't care. This is exactly what we do. We decide that we don't care when it's too late to care. We decide that it really wasn't all that valuable when we've discounted the value because of what we've done. We decided it wasn't that big of a deal. I know what my mom told me. I know what my dad told me. I know what my employer told me. I know what I've always heard. I went to church. I grew up. I know. I've heard all that, but that's just not that big of a deal. It's just one drink. It's only a casual conversation with her. I'm not taking that much money. No one will notice. And we like Esau, we create a narrative. And the narrative is this: it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't that great of a loss. And then we start to believe our own narrative. What else could I have done? I was gonna die. What else could I have done? I would have lost my job. What else could I have done? He would have never gone out with me again. What else could I have done? If I told her the whole story, that'd have been the end of the relationship. No, really, what else could I have done? He would have moved out. That would have been it. I didn't have a choice. And then after we've created the story, we start to believe the story that we manufactured just to justify what we've done. I don't really care. I didn't really have a choice. And then, man, we hang on to our excuses and we hang on to our justification. And here's the thing. Very few people ever face up to any of that stuff in their lives. And this is the hard part. That when we are never true to ourselves, we kind of walk with a limp. And the healthy people around us, they notice. They know something's up. Every once in a while, somebody tries to bring it up with us. We do the same thing. It wasn't a big deal. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And we're never, ever truly ourselves, because you can't be yourself as long as you're lying to yourself. Maybe worse, no one can know your true self as long as you're lying to yourself. And maybe worse of all than that is long-term, you can't give your entire self to someone else as long as you're lying to yourself. And if you know how this story plays out, Jacob's bargaining power, his deceit, Esau's short-sightedness, it sets in motion a series of events that will rip this family apart for decades. It wasn't just about two brothers anymore. It was about everyone related to them for generations, which makes sense because that's what we've said. Our lack of integrity always affects the people around us. So before this day is out, you're going to have the opportunity. Your appetite, my appetite, our appetites, they will compete with our integrity. And we will be forced to say no to one, either to satisfy the other or to maintain the other. Our appetites compete for our future. We either rule them or they rule us. We either rule them or they ruin us. And at some level, we will all be tempted to trade our future for what amounts to a bowl of stew. In the moment, man, it doesn't look like a bowl of stew. No, it looks way, way better than that. But a year later, 3 years later, 5 years later, you look back and you're like, you know what? It's gone. What I got in the trade, gone. The relationship I thought was worth sacrificing my integrity for, not even in my life anymore. So here's why I want to land today. I want to ask you this question. What's your bowl of stew? And not in the past, right? We all got bowls of stew that, man, we made bad trades, right? No, I'm talking about right now. What is competing right now with your integrity? What's competing for your preferred future? If I said to you, hey, where do you want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? Like, where do you want to be relationally, financially, spiritually? What's competing for that picture? And you may have it written down. You're maybe one of those goal people. This is not me, but you've got the plan. You've got a general idea of where you want to go, what you want to do, who you want to be, what you want it all to look like. And the question is, what's competing right now for that future? Let me ask it another way. Who or what is difficult to say no to? The thing or the person that you know you ought to say no to. What are you talking yourself into that the people who love you the most would be trying to talk you out of? Because here's the deal. Your appetite starts to whisper, it's not that big a deal. It doesn't matter. So what are you doing that's not exactly illegal, not exactly immoral, but man, I wouldn't want anybody to know about this? What are you doing? It's kind of on the line, but man, you certainly wouldn't want to have to explain it to somebody. Because here's what we all have in common with Esau. We have no idea who or what hangs in the balance of our decisions, of whether or not our trade, the future that we trade for something that's here and now, then it's gone. We don't know. See, you think you do. I think I do. But the reason why Esau wasn't concerned is because when he thought about what he was giving up, he didn't think about it. He just thought about what was right there in front of him. But man, Jacob knew better. Everybody who ever's heard this story knows better. When people tell this story, they just laugh, right? Who would do that? Who would trade their future for a bowl of soup? Who would do that? I could do that. You could do that. Honestly, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your title is. Some of you are listening to this message going, man, I wish I had heard this 3 months ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, because I've done that. So here's the challenge. The challenge is, would you be willing to stand up straight, sit up straight, and decide once and for all, now that I know what's at stake, I will not trade what I value most, my preferred future, for something that I have an appetite for right now. I'm not going to trade what I value most when I know what God has for me in the future. Then, would you just do what you ought to do, even if it costs you? And you will be so glad that you did. The people who love you the most will be so glad that you did. The people that depend on you every day will be so glad that you did. So what's your bowl of stew? Don't trade your future. Don't trade your story. Don't trade your legacy. Don't trade your future relationships for a bowl of stew. Just do what you know you ought to do. And I want to give you a minute. Because here's what happened. When I asked, what's your bowl of stew? I bet for a lot of you, something came to mind. Something came to mind, and suddenly your eyes were open. In fact, you saw what's really at stake. And you thought, oh my gosh, that is not a good trade. So I want you to do this. I want you to pray. I want you to pray, and I want you to tell God, no more trading for me. I'm not going to do this. My future is too important. So here's what I want you to do. I just want you to close your eyes. I'm going to give you some time. I'm going to give you some time to say, God, I don't want to trade anymore. I want help controlling my appetites. I want to focus on you. I want integrity to be my guide. Pray that prayer. We're going to give you a minute. Jackie will close us in just a second.